Hi guys! Yesterday we showed you how to set up the worm farm, and today we're adding worms. So they're not hard to find at all. We got them FedExed and they've actually been sitting in the mail delivery room for a day, which is not great. So this mixture has been sitting for about a day. Let me move this over here. And in the previous video, we also showed you that, we added a newspaper to the bottom tray to make sure no worms fall out. And the one thing we didn't do was we were supposed to dampen the newspaper. So the newspaper has actually soaked up a lot of moisture from the mixture we made in the previous video, which is good because, as you'll see, you're only supposed to get a couple of drops of water. So this is perfect. Now we're going to add worms. A lot of the worms native to North America went extinct in the previous ice age. And so the ones we have today were actually reintroduced by European settlers. And the worms we got are called European nightcrawlers. So that's why. There are 2,700 different species of worms. So we did a bit of digging and, no pun intended. We did a little bit of research to see which ones are the perfect worms. The two commonmost types are red wigglers and the European nightcrawlers, which are the ones we got. We got the European nightcrawlers because they have a larger range of temperature where they do their thing, whereas the red wigglers has a smaller range, and the red wigglers eat more and they reproduce quicker. So because the worm farm is just this little size and we're only two people, we chose the nightcrawlers. One thing we didn't do in the previous video is add soil to the mixture we made. And that is because the worms we bought actually comes in peat moss. And the reason you add soil to this to get the worms settled is that so the microbes can start breaking down the food, get the worms settled, get them happy. So because the worms have been sitting in here for a day, they're a bit slow, but we're gonna add these and just spread them out. Let's see if we can find worms to show you. We got about 2,000 worms for this size of farm. And today is the first time we're going to use the cultivator. It should just be called a rake. It's a rake. And because the worms are clumped together, I don't want to hurt them. I'm just going to use this to spread them out a bit. And they're really good looking. They're very fat and they're moving quite a lot, which is great. They're all clumped together. We're gonna add the second bag of worms. And just spread it out a little bit and then kind of leave them to explore their new environment. One thing you have to do when you add the worms to the farm is actually rehydrate them because they've been in a FedEx box for like 4 days. So they're drying out. Before we do that, let me show you a worm though, so you can see what they look like. This is a good one. We'll do another video of exactly how the worm is put together and what its biology is. But there are 3 types of earthworms. You get composting worms, earth worker worms, and root dwelling worms. Their names say exactly what they do. And these composting worms don't actually live in the soil. They live in the top 10 inches of topsoil, and it's because they eat dried up leaves and all of the stuff that they find on the forest floor. So for now, to get them started before we give them food. We just want them to get settled in. The bag says give them half a cup of water. So we've got 1 cup in here for 2 bags. And I'm just gonna sprinkle this. We don't want to make it too wet because then all the hard work we've done means nothing. The last thing we need to do is add another layer of newspaper on top and just dampen the newspaper as well. All that does is keep the moisture inside the worm farm. Because the only time composting worms actually burrow down into the soil is when they get dried out. And that's where the whole slimy worm thing comes from, because they'll excrete a slime to keep them hydrated when they get dry. So I'm just adding the last bit of water. And that's it. We're gonna let this sit for a day before we add the food. And we wanna close it up so that it stays wet. Thanks, guys.